Hello and welcome to this third week of my reflections. This past week, I passed a significant moment. I have not travelled by train now for more than 12 months. The frustrating thing is, I bought a new 3-year rail card just before lockdown began, and I haven't been able to use it at all. The rail companies tell me that although I won't be able to use it for over a year, I'm not allowed any refunds. I do hope to make the most of it once we can travel again. I enjoy travelling by train. The sense of relief when you're carried along without the burden of responsibility is great. There is a great release about being a passenger. But we can't always be those passengers. Sometimes we have to take responsibility for our actions. And I want to suggest that it's very easy to become a passenger Christian. If our journey through Lent is supposed to mean anything, then I want us to recognise that this is a process of moving from passenger to participant. I'm reminded that a few weeks ago, the Vice President on her visit to us spoke of consumer Christians. I want to suggest that we shouldn't be consumers or even passengers, but rather participants. This means that in our discipleship, you and I are called to be activists. Now, I think the most significant move from being passenger to participant is to be found in Mark's Gospel, in chapter 8 and verses 34 and 35. He called the crowds with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it." That passage occurs just after Peter has made his great statement recognizing Jesus as the Christ. And Jesus immediately tells the disciples that he, Jesus, must go up to Jerusalem to be killed. And immediately Peter jumps in and says, "No." And the following verses are his response, which includes what we've just heard. It's the moment when the disciples cease to be consumers, cease to be passengers, and become participants. Well, they may not have realised it at the time, but this is the moment. When later, after the cross, resurrection, and ascension, Peter looks back, he sees this as the moment. Peter, nor the rest of the disciples, can no longer simply be passengers swept along on the coattails of Jesus' radical mission. This is a time to stand up and be counted. Where I wonder was the moment when you made that step to be a participant and not a passenger. Was it at the moment of conversion? For some, it was the time to recognise that. Or was it at some other point, aware of Jesus' love for you, and you realised that you could no longer be on the sidelines, but had to be involved, doing something? Or perhaps still more, should I be asking this question? Have you yet moved from passenger to participant? I believe there is a part for all of us to play. It may not be the same part at each stage of life, but the wisdom we need to discern is to understand what is my role as a participant now. I'm well aware that some will say to me, "Well, my active days are over, they're long past." But as we've learned this past year, activists don't have to be rushing around all the time. You can still be in one place and be an activist. If anything, this year has taught us that we can be activists from our own homes, be that a study, a dining room, a living room, or even a bedroom. We can still do things from home. And I'm going to suggest to you that if you're truly going to be an activist from the comfort of your home, then you can be an activist in prayer. We need people who are active in prayer. And there is a clear case of moving from passenger to participant. Throughout the years of ministry, I have visited the housebound regularly, and I have visited housebound who hold others in prayer. They were still participants, they were still activists, and we can all be activists in prayer. From a hymn by James Montgomery. Prayer is the simplest form of speech that infant lips can try. Prayer, the sublimest strains that reach the majesty on high. Pray with me. May God grant us the time to spend in prayer this week, that we may be participants, not passengers. Amen.